Hey everyone, Nubkeks here. In today's video, we got a very dramatic title. Are Heroes of the Storm players stupider than players of other MOBA games? Very, very controversial, and believe it or not, I actually, in at least some ways, which I'll make clear in this, I actually do think this is true. And I'm going to show you why and how this is the case over the course of this video. I think you probably will agree with me by the end of it. But if not, we should at least have, hopefully, a pretty interesting discussion going on here. I love these kinds of videos, actually. These are always my favorite ones to make. And I'm really glad that you guys like them too. So yeah, I'm going to keep doing these because I think it's fun. But this was based off of a blog post I read today. It was posted yesterday, or I don't know, during the night for me, America, Europe, you know how it is. By Trent Esports over in Heroes Hearth, and his initial blog post was called "Quick Match Made Me Dumb: How Heroes of the Storm Teaches You the Wrong Lessons from Minute 1." So I'm going to be drawing on some of this stuff from this blog post. Now he goes into other things, like he talks about the quest system critically, he talks about Quick Match critically, as well as being a big contributor to this problem. And let me actually touch on the problem here and make that clear from the start, because I think this is kind of the interesting thing, is he's talking about how he has had lots of experience in lots of different MOBAs, and what he's found is that when you compare like for like in terms of, you know, ranks, in terms of overall skill level between these MOBAs, let's say for example you compare a Bronze Heroes of the Storm player to a Bronze League of Legends player, what you find is that the League of Legends player or the Smite player or the Dota player, whatever it is, they know an awful lot more about their game and about the strategies that go into the game that a similar player does in Heroes of the Storm. You know, same thing for, like, let's say Grandmaster to Grandmaster, whatever. You know, across all different ranks, across all these different things, that in Heroes, people just don't know as much about the game. They're running around headless a lot more, right? And I do agree with this. And again, he touches on, like I said, he talks about how the quest system makes people selfish. This is kind of interesting. Maybe it's worth discussing in another video. I didn't have any major initial thoughts because, like, it's just something I don't think about, right? Like, I have all the heroes and I've had them for, I probably haven't thought about quests in a couple of years. Like, I literally have more gold in the game than I can spend. Like, I re-rolled pretty much every chest 3 times, so I've got more gold than I can spend. You know, it's not something I actually think about, though I will say that one of the best changes they made was when they made quests work with any hero choices in drafts. I think that would have been, it was very poor before, where you'd be going in and kind of going, oh, I mean, it's Hero League, and I should probably pick a tank here, but ooh, I got a quest for a specialist, maybe I should play Murphy. You know, that was bad, but anyway. The thing that I think actually is massively important and does really make a huge difference in terms of player knowledge and player skill in Heroes, a really dramatic and stark difference, is actually one of the best features in the game, which is the map system, right? The fact that we have, how many maps is it? I actually forget how many it is. I should have checked. It's something like 12 maps, right? It's a ton of maps, and I actually think that the map pool has doubled since the game came out. I think that has a huge impact on player skill, and it's actually, in some ways, it's quite a problem. Like I said, it's one of the best things about the game as well. That's why I play Heroes and I don't play those other games. I'd be very bored very quickly of League of Legends. I love the variety in Heroes. I think it's fantastic. However, it does contribute to a lot of problems in terms of strategy, a lot of problems in terms of game knowledge. Why is that? Well, look, at its core, right, compare it to League, where you're playing on, I mean, there are a couple of maps, but realistically, for the most part, you're playing on the same 5v5 map, Summoner's Rift. You're playing on that every single game, right? Every time you queue up, you're going into the same map. Whereas, in Heroes, there is a map pool now, but it could take you ages before you play on the same map, and you certainly, very likely, won't be playing on the same map multiple games in a row. This has a massive effect. One thing that you're missing out on a couple of things. Let's say, in this case, I'm showing you some gameplay from Battlefield of Eternity. I've really noticed this recently, like this problem with the map pool, because one of the things I'm asked most often is for guides on maps, right? People really feel the need. They're like, gosh, there's so many maps, how do I play the best on them? Are there things I'm doing wrong? Like, I get asked this all the time. People really want to know, because they really do feel like this is something that they're lacking, something that they need. people realize that it is for them, you know, individually a weakness, right? They don't know the maps that well, which is totally understandable, right? It's indeed expected. Battlefield, let's say I want to learn about Battlefield of Eternity. Well, I want to make a map guide for Battlefield of Eternity. It might not even be in the map rotation at the moment. You know, it might not even be there. It might take me ages to make a map guide because I simply can't get any play on it in Hero League, right? It just might not be possible. It might not be there. One of the other big things you're missing out on is iteration, right? It's like doing the same thing over and over again, but making small changes and then seeing how it goes. So let's say again, Battlefield of Eternity. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna play 5 games in a row on BOE. Let's say, hypothetically, it's the only map. 5 games in a row. I'm gonna play Sonya every game and just see what I can do. Okay, in the first game it goes well, right? The second game it goes well too. Third game, I'm gonna try take Nubkeks this time around. Does that work out better? Does it work out worse? Ooh, I got beaten in this game. I kind of got stomped. Why did that happen? You kind of learn from these small things, and that the repetition, all of the things being the same, you know, the map being the exact same every time, helps you do that iterative thing. It's, you know, the scientific method in a certain extent, you know, having control groups, right? Having certain factors that don't change, right? It's always the same map, it doesn't change. You can eliminate that and you can try out different things and get better at it. You can't do that in Heroes right now because you just go into any games, you're not going to get Battlefield of Eternity the same multiple times in a row. I mean, I could very easily, for example, spend 6 hours trying to make a guide on Battlefield of Eternity, spamming Hero League. I might get like 1 or 2 or 3 games on BOE, which is a tiny amount for all that time spent. On top of this, of course, as well, everyone has this problem. Well, most people do, pros don't, but most people have this problem. Most people have this problem. There could be advanced strategies on certain maps, right? More intricate, more complicated ways of doing things. Like, let's say, okay, perhaps on BOE there is like, well, if we move like these 3 heroes over here and then these 2 heroes over here, and we like leave one lane empty and rush the Merc camp with 2 heroes on this lane, and then we push its 5, you know, we can maybe have this massive early game lead. I don't know. In order to pull off a strategy like that, though, you kind of have to have everyone on board. But if everyone's in the same boat where they don't get to try out these different maps, it becomes very difficult, right? With simpler strategies, yeah, you can make some adjustment by talking in chat or whatever. But with more complex strategies, kind of really exploiting the map to its maximum potential, people kind of need to know, the whole team needs to know, because it is a very team-based game, how to do it, or at least most of the team does. But if everyone's having this problem where they can't play the maps and really learn them, then that gets even worse, right? So that's a big issue. Even more so, let's talk about the effect of the pro leagues on this, because the pro leagues are one way this works well, because that can really help you in terms of learning maps. However, you don't even see some maps in the pro leagues. Like, let's say I want to, you know, okay, BOE is fine, right? I can find lots of pro games, and that's one way I could do it. I can find lots of games of pro players playing on BOE, and that will really help me making a map guide video. And then equally for anyone else who's trying to learn about the game, you got lots of pro example of how to play it. What about something like Blackheart's Bay? I can't remember the last time I saw Blackheart's Bay played in a pro game. How do you learn about that? There's just some maps that don't see any play because they're just not taken seriously competitively. They're just banned out because pros don't want to play in them. They don't make for good pro games because of their balance or their design, whatever it happens to be. How do you deal with those? You just simply don't have any info on how to do them. It also, I mentioned this in the previous discussion video, but there's a huge skill gap even between you know, like lower level grandmasters and then actual pro players. One of the very large ways that this takes effect, the one I mentioned in that case was the fact that you know, pro players have lots of experience playing with other equally skilled players against other equally skilled players. Whereas, let's say you're like me, you're just a solo queue player, right? You know, let's say I'm playing Alexstrasza in this game. Right, there might be I won't go with that example. Let's say Dahaka against Artanis, right? Solo lane, something like that, right? Dahaka versus Artanis. Let's put ourselves in that shoe. This is a better example. I might play Artanis against Dahaka like 3 times in a row against rubbish players and think like, wow, okay, this is how this lane goes. But then when we play against, you know, someone who's equally skilled, right, on the Artanis, on the Dahaka, right? it might be a very different experience in the lane. So pro players are going to have that experience all the time because they're, they can do scrims, they can play against equally skilled players all the time. Whereas as a solo queue person, you're not going to have that because there can be large skill differences in solo league. You might play against someone who's way worse, you might play against someone who's way better, you might get someone who's equal skilled, but it can be very difficult to learn in terms of that. That's another thing that's very important. You've got much more variety in terms of skill. But pro players, that's what I mentioned in the last one, they have that opportunity to play with equally skilled players. They also have the ability to iterate in terms of their map strategies. Because unlike a solo queue person, how do you play BOE? How do you learn BOE? Difficult. As a pro person, well, you've got scrims for a few hours every day. You can take your team of 5 pros against another team of 5 pros. You guys go, okay, let's practice BOE today. So yeah, all right, cool. How about this Saturday? We'll meet up. We're going to play BOE for 5 hours straight, and let's come up with some strategies, let's work stuff out. And there you go. Suddenly they have tons of info, and it's very easy for them to do. Well, it's not easy, right? But it's easier for them to develop those strategies. And that's a huge resource that normal players don't have, which again leads to a big skill difference, but also illustrates when you think about a pro player and how they might come up with map strategies, and then you compare that to how just a solo queue player does it. It really does illustrate just how stark and how drastic an impact the map pool has on learning about the game, right? Just how drastic an impact it has. And also, of course, bear in mind, is pro players, it's not just an individual player. They're part of a team. They're part of an organization. They're also part of the community. Generally speaking, a lot of players across teams are quite friendly with each other, and they can talk to each other. They can come up with strategies. Pro players aren't just like individuals totally isolated. They're oftentimes working with other pros to come up with stuff. There is a very real pro community, which is how a lot of these map strategies get developed as well, which is something that we don't have just as normal players. It's not something that you have. You pick it up through watching the HGC, that's great, but it's not something that you get direct access to yourself, So that's a massive issue, right? I really do think then this leads to a huge skill difference between. It can lead to a lot of ignorance, let's say. It really can lead to a lot of ignorance in terms of how to actually play stuff and what to actually do in terms of the game. And there can be oftentimes very huge problems with it. It's something that I've, ranted about on stream a few times, which is, players that, I love ranting about master players on stream, right? I love ranting about master players on stream. I can be a bit of a dick sometimes, it's true, but there is some very real problems where, although, let's say, again, with master players, you think, gosh, master, they must be very good. There can be very large areas of the game where they really don't know anything about it. They could really struggle. Give you one specific example that I remember ranting about recently was I've definitely found that even among master players, you can very much struggle with specific kinds of team comps, right? Generally speaking, they're actually extremely good. I've generally found it doing like hard engaged dive comps, but then it really falls apart very quickly once you move into doing anything with a bit more nuance, with a bit more subtlety. For example, what I would call like any comp with kind of any tempo, people really struggle with that up to the very, very high levels of Hero League. So let's say you're playing against a hard engage comp, like they're diving in with like a Diablo and Apocalypse. You're gonna have like Greymane jump in as well. They're gonna have like, let's say Alexstrasza, Illidan, whatever, they've got some really hard engage divey comp. And then your team you're playing has a much slower comp. You don't have that. Let's say you've got like double support or something. So they've got tons of burst damage, they've got tons of CC, and their goal is to kind of just explosively engage and, get a kill. Or do enough to get enough value within, let's say, the first 5 seconds of the team fight that they win, right? It's about maximizing your value in that sense. If you get a kill, then you probably almost definitely win, because that's worth so much. But with the slower team comp, it's sort of tempo-based team comp, I see Master plays terrible at this, right? Where you go, okay, look at our team fight against their team fight. We can actually win the team fight, but the way we do it is. It depends on which heroes do which things, but broadly speaking, it's like we have to wait about 4 or 5 seconds. We have to mitigate and minimize the effect of their engage, just minimize the value of their engage, their burst, their CC, And then after that, then we move in more aggressively with our cooldowns and we try to do that. Anything with that sort of tempo, people start to fall apart because it's that level of complexity that becomes difficult to do and difficult to work out, right? Saving cooldowns for certain moments, anything like that. Really, again, this is something I've seen in Master, becomes very difficult. You start to see very large cracks appear in the way that it's played. Whereas, like I said, typically by the time you get to Master, people are very good, usually at hard engage comps, which is we just all jump in on the fight and we burn all of our abilities straight away. We don't hold them for anything. We're just like, go crazy, YOLO, face plant, face dive, kill everything. That's pretty good. In fact, you can probably see this happening in this team fight here. Just dive. Very, very good at that. They can be very effective, but falls apart when it becomes more subtle. So yeah, I mean, these are a few of the things that I've really massively noticed as I blow the Artanis towards the Valera, almost get her killed. Whoops. But it is an issue. And it comes from the complexity of the game. Another very, very important aspect, and to come back to the original blog post where he talked about quick match itself being a problem. Now, I've talked about this in other videos, but one, in terms of learning the game and game knowledge, drafting in Heroes is actually much more important than it is in other MOBAs. Perhaps to a problematic degree, but it's very hard to see how you can actually change it, because not only are you trying to construct a team that works against the enemy team, right? You're trying to make a team that works together. You want to pick heroes that work together on your side, but you also want to pick ones that are good against what the enemy team is trying to do. Then you also want to, in theory, start denying them certain picks and certain combos. So there's quite a lot of complexity in terms of the pure hero versus hero draft. And you have that in, let's say, League of Legends or Dota 2. You have exactly that as well. But Heroes adds another level of difficulty, which is, again, the maps. Which is, you need to pick heroes not only that do the whole hero versus hero thing in terms of drafting, but they have to fit the map as well. And you have to build certain comps for the map. And that adds, again, another massive level of difficulty to playing the game and knowing how to pick it and what you should do. It really does add a massive level of difficulty. So in that sense, I do think there is a problem with quick match in terms of learning the game in that sense, because not only are you it's kind of funny really, isn't it, when you compare it, like when I played League, at least, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but I think it probably is, they didn't have a quick match type mode where it just slaps you with, whatever random heroes people have queued as. It's totally random who you're playing with. In League, when I used to play, you have blind pick, so you couldn't see what the enemy team has, but you can see what your teammates are picking. So you construct a comp with them, so at least you get the sort of team synergy right. And also, basically, you know what the map is. It's kind of funny that in Heroes, which is even more complex in terms of draft, that we have a game mode that's, not only does it have no draft, i.e. quick match, but there's not even any blind pick or anything like that at all. You're just picking heroes totally randomly. It's like, okay, I'm going to pick Abathur. Who knows what map I'm going to get or what teammates I'm going to get. And let's say, again, Abathur is a great example of a hero that only really works on certain maps and only really works with certain heroes and has some very significant counter picks that are worth considering. But yeah, how are you supposed to learn that? Very difficult to actually learn that. Very, very difficult to actually learn that. So I do think there is this big burden on Heroes players in terms of knowledge, in terms of learning. Because how do you learn? It becomes very difficult, I think. You really do have to, I'd say, pay a lot of attention to the pro games. You have to learn a lot from pro games, because that is one of the main ways to learn about the maps. It's just impossible almost to do it just through the game. You have to learn it through HGC, where you go, okay, this is how the pro team plays the map, because they've got to practice it over and over again with other good players, right? You just simply can't get that yourself. You can't get that consistency. You can't learn through iteration. So you have to watch HGC, I think, to learn a lot of stuff about the game. Or you have to watch streamers. You have to be taught it in some way. It's just so difficult to actually learn it by yourself, just because just the sheer number of maps, and then the way the draft works with that, the way the heroes, the way team comps, the way all that stuff interacts. And I do think then that leads to this problem where, yeah, Heroes players, compared to other MOBAs, they're kind of stupider. They don't know what they're doing half the time. And you'll see this wonky stuff in Hero League, even at high levels where people don't know how to draft, they don't know how to go around the map, they don't know map timings, they don't know anything. Because simply, how are they supposed to learn? How are they supposed to learn? Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts down below. And yeah, I'll see you guys real soon for more Heroes of the Storm. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.